This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
What's going on, y'all? It's your host, Will, coming back for a new episode of the HuntStand Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be bringing on a good friend of ours, Dan Johnson, Nine Finger Chronicles Podcast. If you heard of him, if not, you need to go check him out. He's got a dope podcast. I listen to it myself, so if you're a big bow hunter or just a hunter in general, go check his podcast out. So we're going to get Dan on here today to talk about how to define success. You know, it's been a long deer season. It's almost Christmas. Some people have tagged out. You may not have, and you're still trying to go after that target buck. You're just trying to put meat in the freezer for you and the family. And so we're not always successful. You know, we don't always get that target buck, and sometimes there's years where we don't even kill, and that's okay. And so we're getting Dan on here to talk about a few things around that and how to define success if you don't kill or if you don't achieve that goal that you were going after this year. So not only that, we're going to talk about some late season strategies, how he tackles deer hunting this time of year, some different tips and tactics he does as well. So we're just going to get Dan on here to pick his brain and talk about his story. So we just want to thank all y'all for tuning in to the HuntStand Podcast. We really appreciate the support, all the downloads and listens we've gotten from y'all so far this year. It's been awesome. The support's been amazing. So we just want to say thank you to all the listeners out there. And we think we got a really special podcast for you today, and you definitely don't want to miss out on this. But on a side note, if you haven't downloaded HuntStand yet, make sure you do. We got the free version. We've got the pro version for $29.99 a year. And then new this fall, we have launched Pro Whitetail. That's just $69.99 a year. You get a ton of different features to help you chase after some giant whitetails. And included in that, we have a whitetail activity forecast tool. You've got a rut map that has been put together with Brian Murphy on our team over here that got together with seems like a million different wildlife biologists to put this together, and just all the different things that went in to build this is pretty amazing. So if you want to have that, make sure you got HuntStand app, download it, upgrade to Pro Whitetail today. You don't want to miss out on that. And again, y'all, we just want to thank you for tuning in to the HuntStand Podcast, and here's our guy, Dan Johnson.
Well, Dan, man, welcome to the HuntStand Podcast. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day today to just talk with me, man. So welcome to the HuntStand Podcast.
Hey, dude, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, you know, one of the things I like to do, you know, I'm sure a lot of people know you, know your name, know your voice already, but for those that don't, I like for the guest to give those listeners what I call the 30-foot tree stand view of who you are, kind of where you're from, and how you've gotten to where you are in life, man. So tell us about Dan.
Man, that's a loaded question.
I know, right?
I'll tell you this. I'm going to start kind of backwards. I have gotten to where I'm at today by the hard way. And what I mean by that is being a dumb young person, learning every lesson, both in the tree stand and out of the tree stand, the hardest way possible, right? Getting in trouble or, you know, making bad decisions. And eventually, my parents raised me good enough to where I was able to learn from those mistakes and pull myself out of whatever hole I was in and come out a better person. So just kind of a really rough road that was just full of learning experiences all the way until really I had my, really until I got married in 2010.
Yep.
And then from that point on, I got married in 2012. I'm sorry. So 2012, a little bit of a lifestyle change happens. You get married. 8 months, 9 months later, 9 to 10 months later, or something like that, I had my first daughter, or my first kid, my daughter, and that was a really big life-changing experience for me. And because now I wasn't just responsible for myself, I was responsible for somebody else. Right.
Yeah.
And so that was a big moment. And so now fast forward to today, I am like, this is not necessarily in this order, but the first three things are father, husband, business owner. And then after that is bow hunter. So that is, I guess, if you're going to put a label on me, that is what I in this climate, this social climate, that's what I identify as, is a husband, a father, a business owner, and then a bow hunter after that.
I like it, man. Our stories kind of line up there a little bit. I like it. So tell us about Nine Finger Chronicles. How did that get started? And, tell us more, man.
Yeah. So really the story for the Nine Finger Chronicles podcast started in 2005 when I got my finger cut off in an industrial accident. So, yeah. So I always lie to people because what I'm about to tell you isn't that cool. So usually I make up some kind of cooler story like, oh, dude, I was hand fishing and I got my finger bit off by a snapping turtle, or I lost it in a fight, or like in a bar fight and somebody bit it off. Just something crazy.
It's funny you say that because I had an uncle that also had a finger missing, and he would tell us all the time. He's like, man, I went diving once and a shark bit it off. So that's what he used to tell us.
Right. And my family is littered with people missing fingers. I mean, it's just like farmers, construction workers.
Yep.
And so, I never thought about it until it actually happened. But I look around, my grandpa was missing part of his finger. My uncle, and some other relatives were missing parts of thumbs and fingers from saws and combine belts and things like that. So I fit right in when it happened. And then, so a whole bunch of time goes by. In 2006, I started taking, so I lost my finger in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2006 is when I had kind of this awakening where I said to myself, hey man, I want to bow hunt as much as possible, every day if possible. I was 26 at the time. And so I jumped into, I had been hunting for a while, but I started taking it really serious. I wanted to learn everything about the animal, how they move through the terrain, all that stuff, in 2006. And then, I did some other things within the hunting community and in the hunting industry. I jumped on board with Mark Kenyon and the Wired to Hunt podcast. I think it was 2013 or early 2014. And then in 2014, I believe, is when I actually started the Nine Finger Chronicles blog and podcast.
Okay. So, man, I like your backstory and everything. Just talking about how you've done it just the hard way and going and just doing it and just getting it done. So you started Nine Finger Chronicles, and then, you got with Mark Kenyon, did all that, and then Nine Finger Chronicles came about. So, man, what I want to talk to you about today on today's episode, let's talk about deer hunting, right? That's what we love to talk about.
Absolutely.
So, the rut has pretty much come and gone across most of the nation. By the time this podcast airs, we're going to be in that late season time of year, December. Some seasons are going through January. And so I kind of want to pick your brain on some of your late season strategies and how you've been successful that time of year. And so kind of give us that ceiling, that 30-foot tree stand view again, if you will, just kind of like how you approach the late season.
This is going to sound really weird, but I approach every season the exact same way, right? Whether it's early season, whether it's the rut, whether it is the late season, all right? Pre-rut, post-rut, full bore rut, like whatever. There's certain people out there that have like the entire season broken down into every single possible, like, I don't know what it is. They have it like, oh, from this date to this date is this phase, from this date to this date is this phase. And to me, I grew up in a hunting climate where I couldn't get out and hunt as much as I wanted to, right? I had to work. And so I was limited to the amount of time that I could get out and hunt. So I was hunting whether it was 80 degrees outside, whether it was negative 20 degrees outside, whether it was October 1st, whether it was January 1st.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was getting out whenever I could. And so one thing that I've learned is that deer use, and this is in my opinion, deer use specific terrain features, whether they're big, giant terrain features or very subtle terrain features. I am in those terrain features, whether that's a pinch point, a staging area, a draw that leads up to a cornfield downwind of some kind of bedding area. These are places that deer hang out, not just part of the year, but all year round. Deer live out and they travel through these spaces. And so my approach has always been find these spots where deer travel and put a tree stand in there. And they're going to come by at some point, right?
True.
Excuse me.
No, you're good.
And so, yeah. And so that's my approach, man. It's just find where deer travel. It's just, this is the very boiled down version of it, and put a tree stand there or put a ground blind there. And yes, some of these places change throughout the year. But the way deer travel through the terrain features is pretty much the same.
You know, it's funny you say this because where we hunt down here in Central Texas, we don't have a super giant piece of property. Like there's ranches out here that are thousands and thousands of acres, and we just got this one little parcel, and it's all low fence, free range deer. And it's funny you say this because I've tried to do kind of like what you said is I've tried to break down this place and, oh man, this is going to be a great stand location for this time of year and this and that. And then inevitably, most of those have failed. I've been pretty successful with some of them, but it's always boiled down to like what you're saying is there's this one specific area that these deer hang out year round. They travel through this one spot for whatever reason, and I've put one stand there, and I always kill there.
Yeah. And so the reason I believe in this approach and I found success in it is because I do not have the ability or the funds to hunt like the content providers of the world, if that makes sense, right? So everybody goes on to YouTube or on YouTube or the Outdoor Channel or whatever, and they see these people with manicured properties, very low pressure, and they're able to just basically sit on a field edge and wait for deer to come to them. Yeah. Well, that just didn't happen. I live in one of the best whitetail states in the country, in Iowa here, and that still does not happen. Right. It was completely unrelatable to me. So I had to find something that worked for me. And that eventually led me off the field edges into the timber, finding these terrain features where deer liked to travel during daylight or hang out during daylight. And that's when I started finding more success.
Man, it's just a super simplified approach. I like it.
Very simple. Very
that.
simple.
I like it because, kind of what you're saying, it's just there's so much out there, so much information, and you see all these things on YouTube, and I've been a victim of it where you just overcomplicate it, and I love that you just simplify it and you just go and do it, man.
Yeah. Yep. I try to take my brain out of it because ultimately my brain is what gets me in trouble when I start to overthink things. And something happened for me in 2016 where it became less thinking and more reacting. And I was able to just look at the conditions, know the properties, and just be like, I need to be here. And that was it. Yep. I go there and have a tree stand. Okay, well, I got into this tree stand. It didn't pan out tonight, but I saw deer movement on this next ridge over. all right, time to tear down and get in there the next day into the next ridge over, and just being fluid and not being tied down to one particular stand or one particular area. And I know that's a luxury with people who have larger properties, but even in smaller properties where movement could be limited, I always found myself micro adjusting my tree stand locations to put myself in the right possible spot.
Right. So are you looking, or, with this simplified approach where you're just kind of basically going in that one area, are you worried about moon phase? Are you looking at, I know there's guys that if the wind's not just perfect or just right, they're not going in there. They may not go in there for days. Like, are you being picky on when you go in and go out of there and how long you're staying in there or anything like that?
There's a little bit of that. Oh, but I will say this: moon phase has no, I do not think about the moon phase ever at all, ever. Zero. I would never will think of the moon phase. I don't understand. Number one, I'm sure the moon has something to do with it. If we were to really break it down and do like an in-depth study on how the moon affects movement of animals throughout the world, I'm sure there's something that can be said about it.
Yeah.
But regardless of the moon, like where it's at in the sky, whether it's a full moon or a half moon or this, waning crescent, whatever, blah, 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 deer are still in the woods, right?
Yep.
And so I don't see the moon being a light switch where it's just like, attention deer, it's time to start moving.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, I have seen, and I put it to the test a couple seasons ago or a while ago, where I was like, I got in a tree and I said, okay, moon phase. What's the moon phase say today? Moon phase says it's going to be a, heavy deer movement day. Oh man. And I went out and I saw heavy deer movement. And then another time, same scenario, heavy deer movement, didn't see any deer. Right. And so and that kind of leads me back to, I don't really hunt field edges anymore, because I'm not interested in seeing a lot of deer. I'm interested in having deer within shooting range. And so by tucking myself into a really good travel corridor, pinch point, fence crossing, staging area, downwind of bedding, the saddles, I don't know, whatever your keyword is there that you want to insert in those terrain features, I have seen and had more deer within shooting range, but less deer overall seen throughout my sits.
All right, y'all, we're going to interrupt this podcast real quick for a quick word from our sponsors. The HuntStand podcast is brought to you by Lacrosse Footwear, innovating boots that endure with you through every adventure, now and forever forward. The HuntStand podcast is also brought to you by Springfield Armory and Winchester. And finally, the HuntStand podcast is brought to you by Yamaha and its full line of class-defining, adventure-seeking motorcycles, ATVs, and side-by-side vehicles. All right, y'all, we're going to get back to this episode of the HuntStand podcast.
Okay. I was going to say, on that moon topic, it's such a controversial thing, because there's so many guys that, they live and die by it. And then, there's guys like you and I that we're just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, the moon's there, not really sure if it's doing much to it. I'll say the only thing that I think it really affects me in any way down here in Texas is, we hunt off of bait, off of feeders, everybody knows that. And the only difficult thing about it for me is when it's a full moon at 4 or 5 a.m., those deer are already pretty much in the area, and so it makes it difficult for me to get in the stands. But other than that, I mean, I'm not saying, I'm not going to go hunting because it's a bad moon day. It's like, no, I'm getting in the stand. I'm hoping an opportunity comes by.
Yep, absolutely.
So something else I want to talk to you about, it's this time of year, there's a lot of people that have harvested, they've been successful, they've gotten their target bucks. And then there's also a lot of people that haven't done it yet. They may have had opportunities, they may have had misses, or they just haven't seen the deer yet. And so I think social media is partially to blame for this, but people will start to, for lack of better terms, kind of start to freak out, like, man, I haven't killed that buck yet. Like, I got to kill that buck. But killing that target buck or not killing that target buck doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't have a successful season. And so what I wanted to talk to you about was, if you don't kill that target buck, or let's say you don't even kill a deer this year, you can still have a successful season, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely, man. And I had to learn that probably 10 some years ago, where I was like, I would say that leading up to from 2006 to 2016, that's roughly 10 years of just sucking at bow hunting. I mean, I had to learn, again, like I said, everything the hard way, getting busted, having to learn access routes, refining my setups, knowing things like if I sit in a stand and I see a deer across the field come out of a creek, and then I go there the next night and I sit in the same stand and I watch the deer come out of the creek. At this point, I'm just throwing wishes out into the air saying, I wish that deer came by me. Yeah. I had to learn that I needed to take that stand down and I needed to walk across that field and set up that stand somewhere where my wind wouldn't interrupt his travel pattern and try to get on him the next night. Right. So those type of educate, that type of education. But when it comes to struggling, you really have to ask yourself is, what are you doing that is wrong? And are you repeating that? Right. And I come from, I have some experience in lean manufacturing. And so if there is a problem in a process, you have to ask yourself, there's it's like a problem solving, or it's like an analysis process called 5 why. And you say, why did I get busted? Well, my access route was wrong. Why was your access route wrong? Well, because I parked here. Why did you park here? Or it could be, I got busted in the tree. Well, why did I get busted in the tree? Because I was set up in the wrong spot. Why were you set up in the wrong spot? And really what you're doing is you're asking yourself 5 questions to find the root cause of what your issue is. And then you can hopefully take that root cause and fix it and apply a new method to your approach to kill let's just say a target buck. And then hopefully what you're doing is you're slowly weeding out all of the bad things that you've done in the past and becoming better out of that. And so when it comes to finding a target buck this year, I know that's a very complicated answer, but this is where let's just say right now I'm not tagged out.
Yeah.
In Iowa. And I'm gonna throw the exact same process or approach to deer hunting that I would October 1, October 15th, November 1, November 15th, December 1, whatever the date is. I'm going to, if I'm running trail cameras, I'm going to go take inventory. I'm going to check all my trail cameras. I'm going to try to locate a deer that I want to shoot. B, I'm going to move into those areas. I'm going to look for the best trail. I'm going to look for the best possible sign. I'm going to set up in those areas. I'm going to wait for deer to come through. I'm going to observe my surroundings. I'm going to look for deer movement. If that deer movement is close to me within shooting range, then I might sit there for a couple days. But if it's not, and I notice that deer are coming down a different ridge or draw or subtle terrain feature, or they're hugging a creek or something like that, I'm moving to where that heavy movement is. And so I'm just continuously shrinking down the area until I find the spot that is just, I'm watching deer walk right under my stand all day.
Yeah. So Let's look at it. Let's say you don't tag, right? Let's say you get through the end of the year. Do you ask yourself before the season starts, like, okay, if I don't get that target buck or I don't even get a buck this year, like, what am I hoping to get out of the season? Like, what are my goals? Do you do that?
Yes, absolutely. I kind of have a goal, and it's the floating goal, right? Sometimes it changes throughout the season. I used to be a guy who said, I only want to shoot a certain caliber of deer. Right? I want to shoot a 4-year-old. I want to shoot a 5-year-old. I want it to be this or that or this or that. But what I've realized is that my goal is to pretty much go after the most mature buck on whatever farm that I'm hunting. And so this year was a perfect example where my main farm that I'd been hunting for like 14 years, I noticed there was more cattle in it this year, way more human pressure. There was wild dogs, there's horses, there's other hunters, there's all this activity, and it pretty much just stifled the deer movement, and deer movement had just left the area. And not all deer movement, but like the big mature bucks, they just were not here this year.
Yeah.
So luckily over the summer, I'd gotten access to a new farm. And so I put trail cameras out, did my due diligence there to try to locate something. And I noticed that there was some good deer on this property. And so I just wanted to locate good deer. I found the good deer and then go after the top tier animals on that farm. And I don't ever really I used to be the guy who was like, I have to only shoot this buck.
Yeah.
And that led me to passing a lot of good deer over the years that I should have shot, because I had never shot some of these deer. Like I can remember I was chasing a deer in 2009. I believe it was either 2008 or 2009. I think it was 2009. And at that time, he was like 180-inch, typical, like non-typical 10-pointer. Just he had wow. Junk and splits all over. He was a huge deer, and I was 100% focused on that buck, and then 150-inch 10-pointer comes underneath me and just sits, like hangs out.
Oh,
and I just passed him, and I had never shot. Yeah. And so I had never shot a 150-inch 10-pointer before, but I was so focused on this other deer where I didn't want to shoot this buck. But this leads me to the point where I was, I had never even drawn back on a deer of that caliber before. So I believe in stair stepping to get to where you're at. So yeah. if you've never bow hunted before and a spike comes out, dude, shoot that spike. Next year, a basket rack 8 that might be like 50 inches. Shoot him. Right. Next year, now we're getting up into the 110-inch or whatever, and I'm using Iowa here as a reference. Shoot a 2-year-old. Go through a couple years of shooting 2 and 3-year-olds and just stair step your way up to the point where you're comfortable around big deer, and then you can start being picky and choosy. But you have to understand that there is something that happens to us all for most of us anyway, in the moment of truth, where we freak out and we get really hyped up about drawing back. And it has taken me a very long time to get comfortable around big mature bucks when I'm shooting and while I'm shooting. And so that's a very long way of saying I'm trying to go after maybe like 2 or 3 deer on a particular property.
Now, you've developed that because would you say you have regrets on passing like that 150 that you had just lay underneath you dang near?
Oh, dude, I passed so many good deer back then. I look back into that time frame from 2007 until 2007 to 2011. I passed so many deer I should have shot. It was stupid. And a lot of it had to do with the first time I ever got a trail camera.
Yeah.
And I put it out, and the farmer said, I showed the farmer the pictures of the deer that were on the farm. And he's like, "Hey man, don't shoot that deer. That's just a small buck." And it was like a 120-inch 8-pointer. And I thought it was like a really big buck at the time. And he tells me, "Don't shoot that. There's so many bigger deer out here." And yes, I started to see those bigger deer. And so when that mixed with some of the content that I was watching back in the day, like, oh, so-and-so only shoots big bucks. Well, I'm like, shit, I live in Iowa. I want to shoot big bucks. And so I lived in this realm of make-believe because I was holding out for something that may not have existed. But there were some deer that did exist. And I can remember in 2010 on my birthday, I hit a 210-inch buck high and never recovered him. And the next year he was shot by the neighbor, and that buck made the cover of North American Whitetail.
No.
But I'll tell you this, the guy who shot it is one of like the greatest people of all time. So it's, I had no problem with that. But I guess what I'm getting at here, and I, as you can hear, I like to talk about deer, but I guess what I'm getting at here is like, I really want to just tell people to shoot deer. Like, yes. Get comfortable shooting deer, man. If a doe comes by, shoot that doe. Just put her in your freezer, man. The next doe that walks by, if you're brand new and you have the tags for it, shoot that doe. Stack the bodies. That's going to get you comfortable. And then if you start to chase bucks or a certain caliber of antler size or whatever it is, you start stair stepping into that. You become comfortable in those scenarios, and it just makes you a better hunter in the moment of truth.
Man, that couldn't be more true. Like, just getting reps in the red zone. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not dogging. I have an older brother. I'm not dogging on him by any means, but I got him into bow hunting about 4 years ago, and he's killed a couple of pigs with his bow. We've gone elk hunting. We've been unsuccessful so far up there with bows, but he hasn't killed a deer yet with his bow.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he missed a really nice buck out at our place a couple of weeks ago. And this buck has just been playing cat and mouse with him. I said, man, I'm like, you need to get some practice on a doe, or, he had another nice buck come in, and he kind of had that same scenario. After you've missed this buck, he's like, man, I'm dead set on that deer. I'm going to pass this deer. And now that we're starting to run out of time, he's kind of having those regrets about, man, I don't know when I'm going to get to come back out here. Maybe I'll shoot that buck that came by me if he comes by again, or I need to shoot a doe. And it's kind of funny hearing you talk about this, because it's making me think about him in this whole situation this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like, I don't like giving advice, but that's the advice that I would give to someone who, I don't know, wants to become better at something. And that's do the thing that you ultimately want to do. And that's put a broadhead through the vitals of a deer.
Yep. Get that arrow red.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, man, I know we're running slim on time here, but what I like to do towards the end of these podcasts, do you have any kind of last minute golden nuggets, or just kind of that little special tip in regards to, defining your success, or any of those late season strategies?
Yeah. Okay. So if we're talking late season, this is not rocket science at this point. Find the food, right? Mm-hmm. And you find the food, you're going to find the deer. And it's literally that simple. Now, this goes back to, let's say a farmer didn't get his standing corn. This is like a Midwest problem, right? Farmer didn't get to his corn. It's still in there, and there's a block of timber or finger that leads up to it. And it snowed. All right. Now we see this really defined trail, mm-hmm. right? And now we can see where the deer are coming back and forth, bed to food pattern on the standing corn or food source. If you're further south, there might be a green field, clover patch or ag field or something like that these deer are hitting. it almost goes back to an early season / scouting approach, to where the deer are coming off of the rut. They've been pressured by a gun season usually, and they're just tired, right? All they want to do is sit on their butt and then go eat food.
Yep.
And so it becomes straight line again, bed to food, bed to food. And depending on the wind direction, depends on their access route to the food source. And so you just got to find a spot in that line, usually in a good terrain feature, that funnels deer down, and just access it properly without bumping them, without putting your wind in their nose. And it's like, I feel it's usually that simple. It's just finding them at this point and finding that pattern, which could take some time. So if you have trail cameras, put the trail cameras back out, look for the sign, look for the tracks in the dirt, look for the trails in the snow if you're up north, and just start the process over again.
I like it, man. Yeah, you just got to pick it apart and do what you can, the best you can, and hopefully you come out on top.
Yeah, and the whole point of this is to find enjoyment out of it.
Yes.
Right. I try not to go into every season and say it's rack on the wall or nothing, or it's failure. Right. If I don't shoot a big buck, I'm going to fail. Man, I'm past that. I just absolutely love sitting in a tree and observing nature.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about like just deer. I'm talking about, dude, this year I saw 2 owls fight for the first time in my life.
Serious?
Yeah, two owls were just going at it. And I was like, that's awesome, right? Saw some bobcats doing bobcat stuff. I saw squirrels doing squirrel stuff. I saw birds doing bird stuff. And I know that sounds weird, but man, it is so much better than any TV show. You know, this is the real world. And I don't know what it is, but I just love watching that stuff unfold.
You know, it's funny you say that, because when I first started bow hunting, you know, my dad, we had access to an aunt and uncle that had some acreage, and so they let us come out there. And, you know, as a young guy, I was like, man, I didn't see the buck today. I didn't see any deer. But like kind of what you ran through, I might have had some fox in the area, or, you know, just some other wildlife, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I just saw that, you know, whatnot. And my dad kind of has that same mindset back then, where he's like, I just want to go up there and sit in the tripod or in a ladder stand and just watch. Like, I don't even have to kill anything. And as a kid, I would always look at that like, man, you're nuts. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, as a 8 to 18-year-old, that's how I used to look at it. And now, hearing you say this, and as I'm getting older, you know, I'm 30 years old, I've got a daughter, and, you know, I just like going up and getting a tree. And if I kill, I kill. If I don't, it's still a successful day in my mind, because I'm just blessed to be able to go up in that tree and do what I do, you know? Yeah,
that's a fact, man. That's a fact. I can't wait to get my kids out. I mean, they beg me all the time. They're not quite ready yet to get out there and be quiet and sit still. But when they are, I think my entire focus as a hunter is going to shift into educating them, getting them on deer. Mm-hmm. And if there's time left over, then I'll turn back into the killer, and I'll go out and try to get what I want done. But I think pretty soon I'm going to see a shift in my hunting behavior, in my hunting goals, and it's going to be 100% family focused.
I'm right there with you, man. I've got a 2-year-old right now that, in fact, yesterday morning, like most time in the mornings, she wants to watch Mickey Mouse, and now it's gotten to the point where she wants to watch deer hunting. Like, hearing her say that yesterday morning, like, deer hunting. I'm like, oh boy, oh boy. I love hearing that. So
I got a funny story for you. And I didn't think my oldest son was ever going to get into it. Like, you can kind of tell he's just not, he wasn't getting into it. Right. Yeah. He was my oldest kid was my daughter. She was like, Dad, let's go. Want to go hunting. Want to go turkey hunting. I'm like, baby, you're vibrating when you're in the woods. Like, you got to settle down. You can't move so much. And so And so my son, we're out in the summertime, and we like to go on we call deer drives.
Yeah.
Where we go in the summertime, take the binoculars out, and really get in, like just glass the bean fields. And it really, what it is just a way for me to spend time with my boys. My daughter comes sometimes too, but I'm looking at these does, and there's a small buck out in this field. And my son's like, "Dad, that's a huge buck." I said, "No, buddy, that's just a little, like a forkhorn."
Yeah.
He goes, no, Dad, no. And I'm like, "No, Mac, bud, that's not a big buck. Like it's there." And he literally grabbed my beard. I think my beard, and pulled me. And I looked further down the bean field, and he spotted this absolute giant buck with his bare eyes. He's like, "Dad, I told you that's a big buck."
Yes.
And I'm like, "That's a big buck." "Yeah, you're right, buddy." And we like give each other high fives and all that stuff. And so he's got it in him. I just have to, water it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to help him control it and guide him.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Man, I love to hear that. Well, Dan, man, I really appreciate you just taking the time to hop on here and talk about all these things and just podcasting with me today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Anytime.
Tell us real quick, and tell all the listeners, where can we find you? Where can we find your podcast if they want to take a listen to your podcast as well?
Yeah. So I think the best thing to do is to go to Sportsmen's, SPORTSMENS Empire.com. That's the network that I own. And we have I'm looking right now. Let's see, we got 6, 12, 18, we're talking damn near 20 different outdoor hunting podcasts. Some of the best, in my opinion, some of the best in the industry on there, including the Nine Finger Chronicles, the Hunting Gear podcast, the How to Hunt Deer podcast, and a lot more. But if you want to go look at what I do, sportsmansempire.com is where you're going to find it.
Love it, man. Well, Dan, appreciate your time this morning. Hope you and your family have a very happy and blessed Thanksgiving.
Same to you, man.
All right, y'all. There you go. We just want to thank Dan for his time today and just bringing y'all some nuggets and just some information just to help y'all define success. You may or may not have killed yet. You still got time. Some people, your seasons across the nation, there's some seasons that have closed already. Some people might be done hunting already. And so hopefully you'll be able to take something out of the season, whether or not you were successful, and just being able to define success and what that success looks like to you, whether or not you killed. So again, y'all, we just want to thank you for tuning in to HuntStand Podcast. We really appreciate the support, and we'll see you next time.